Fishing. Whether as a pastime or a necessity, as a species we've been doing it for thousands of years. And as long as there has been video games, we've been doing it there too. Recently I have amended my nighttime routine of playing my Switch in bed, and rather than the usual Spelunky, Isaac or Rogue Legacy, I have been playing Stardew Valley. Each night I play through a couple of days of in-game time whereby I water my parsnips and then I do a little fishing, I sell everything, and then I go to bed and repeat. Then, IRL, I turn off the light and go to sleep. Because of this change, the other day I was sitting at my computer looking at my Steam library and I began to wonder how many of my games have a fishing minigame. So I started to go through them, Googling each title to see what the internet said about it, and then before long I found myself with a spreadsheet and I was recording information into it. So now I have a list, so what's next? Surely I had to play them, right? It seemed like the natural progression. So I decided to play each of them and record my thoughts. A self-appointed quest to play and score these fishing mini-games. It wasn't an exhaustive list, a total of 24 games, and I hadn't decided if I would play them all, and indeed I didn't, but I would have a go. So join me as I play and rank fishing mini-games. So I have a couple of thoughts about this. One is, can any of these mini-games perform strong enough to be worth playing on their own? And two, can any of them replicate in part some of the more relaxing nature of my fishing experiences in real life? My immediate thoughts are maybe and no respectively, but we'll see. I spoke in a recent video I made about playing a game your way, not engaging with everything the game has to offer, and so with regards to the thought number one, I find a kind of perverse pleasure in the thought that you could have a whole ass game and you just play it because you just like the fishing. I think this would probably be a tall order, as the fishing minigame is usually present in games to provide somewhat of a palate cleanser, a break from whatever the cycle of the main game is. So I don't hold out much hope in that sense. With regards to point number two, and the nature of fishing being a relaxing pastime, this could be more achievable. Some games are just good to exist in. The scenery is beautiful, maybe the music is calming or something like that, but part of my IRL fishing experience has actually always been about sitting and chilling with friends in the sunshine. So again, I don't think that you're ever really going to hit those notes because I am playing alone and I am playing inside. My experience of fishing as a child was that I was quite interested in it to a degree, and I would watch quite a lot of videos on coarse fishing, and I had books that I liked to read about all the different river fish with their various illustrations, and I think I had adults around me who liked it, and perhaps that encouraged me to take an interest, probably because I wanted to impress them or something. I did used to go fishing with friends my own age from school, and we would sit on the banks at Berwick Pond and catch a few gudgeon and the odd little perch, maybe a rudd or two, but we were never that successful. We would just spend 4 to 5 hours or so probably not having particularly stimulating conversations because we were stupid little dickhead kids, around 13 and 14 years of age. I remember casting a leisure bomb all the way across the pond and into the tree on the other side, where it then got caught. I caught a crayfish once and took it home and put it in my goldfish tank, not really realising that it would try to eat the fucking fish. I took it out of the tank and took it up to the top of my neighbour's garden, where I had remembered there being a bit of a stream, and I thought I could release it into that. Now it turns out I misremembered and the stream was more of a trickle, but I couldn't be bothered to spend any more time deliberating the saga of the crayfish and delivering it back to its natural habitat, so I kind of just left it there. R.I.P. crayfish. It wasn't your fault. I remember another kid from school coming with us one day, someone that I didn't hang around with as much but was friends with my mate, and whereas I was a sensitive and meek child, he was a bit of a wild rascal, and whilst I had the cowardly cruelty to leave a crayfish to die of exposure, this little bastard caught a gudgeon, wrenched the hook from its mouth, loaded it into his bait catapult and launched that fucker into the sky. A sight that is burned upon my brain forever. Rest in peace, gudgeon. It definitely wasn't your fault. I then started to get older, and the older we got, the less fishing we did and the more fucking about we did, until getting up early and sitting in the cold, in the mud by the lake held no interest for us anymore. So that was the end of my first phase of fishing, and I can tell you the peak was catching a mighty 1 pound bream, the biggest fish I ever caught. The second phase was decades afterwards, probably in my 30s, when each summer we would have at least one day where we would go out and get a licence, head out to the lake in the sun and smoke a big splifter bifter until the sun set, all the while chatting shit all day and catching tiny little fish. As adults, there was no animal abuse, either unintended or intended. All fish were returned to the lake in a responsible way, and an excellently chill time was had by all. So getting back to the video game aspect of this, I think those experiences will be hard to replicate digitally. But I did think of a criteria set in which to judge these games by, and they are as follows. So number 1, gameplay, or the Goldilocks zone, i.e. the quality of the mini-game itself. But why do I call it the Goldilocks zone? Well, it is because there is a sweet spot where the game is not too simple but also not too challenging. It has to be just right. Too simple and it probably falls into the gathering category, and too complicated and it becomes irritating and therefore it is not chill. Number 2, environment and aesthetics. What is it like to spend time doing the minigame? Does it look nice? Does it look awful? This can have a big impact on whether you can be bothered to even do it more than once. Number 3, utility. Does the game provide anything else outside of the immediate experience? Will it aid me in the main game? How meaningful is that to me personally? Or does it have an extra depth, like being able to tick different fishes off of the list when I'm catching them, like a completionist angle? And number 4, time to fish. This one is probably more relevant to this experiment, such as it is, but how long will it take me from starting the game to get to the point that if I want to, I can get to fishing? I shall give these a score out of 5 for each, and then tally them at the end. So here is a list of the games in my Steam library that I could confirm have some kind of fishing minigame. Albion Online, Cult of the Lamb, Elder Scrolls Online, Fable Anniversary Edition, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, Lost Ark, Lord of the Rings Online, Minecraft, Monster Hunter World, Neir Automata, Neverwinter, New World, Old School Runescape, Realm of the Mad God Exalt, Runescape, Stardew Valley, Shenmue 3, Terraria, Toram Online, V Rising, Valheim, and World of Warcraft. Now once again, I will reiterate that I didn't necessarily play every game on this list, but I will explain why as I go through each game one by one and score them. We can then get to the end and see who the ultimate winner is in this pointless competition. Before we start, I will just point out that Architect of Games has made a much more intelligent video on why fishing minigames exist, so after you've watched this, you can go and watch that. Also, this scoring system is hardly scientific and has a fair amount of vibes-based / opinion-based guff, so shut your damn mouths. Let's begin. Albion Online. First up is Albion Online. I'm doing this alphabetically. But what is an Albion Online? To me, Albion Online is a sort of more accessible, less spreadsheet dependent fantasy flavoured EVE Online. It's a sandbox MMO where the players create the content via warring factions holding different areas in the game and creating trade routes, etc. It is full loot PvP, and essentially if you wander out into the wrong region, someone will come along and ras you up and make you all dead and shit. There are different weapons you can use, and you can run about gathering materials to craft shit, and there are solo and group dungeons around and all the stuff you would expect from an MMO. But one of those things that you can do is fishing. I hadn't played this for quite some time, so it seemed to have deleted my characters, so I made a new one and off I went through the tutorial, which takes a couple of hours, but soon enough I was at a point where I could get to fishing. I had to skill myself up and then get a fishing rod, which I just bought with money I made from selling shit that I had gathered or crafted during the tutorial. So as far as getting into it, yes, it took me a little while, but there were different ways I could achieve my goal, so it wasn't too painful. So off I went to do a fishing. So this is nice and simple. You find a body of water deep enough and then you flop your rod in it. You can see fish on the surface and you can cast specifically in that spot for better fishing, but technically I caught stuff by just fishing anywhere in the water, ripple or not. You hold down a button to fill a meter as to how far you will cast your rod, and then off she goes. Once it is in the water, if it bobs under, you press and hold the button again to start reeling it in. It's a bit like Stardew Valley's fishing, where you have to balance the marker in the middle of a gauge and not let it go too far to either end, where you will lose the fish. The sound is good, the game itself is fairly easy whilst making you feel like you're actually doing something, and there are different fish to catch in different areas. I think Albion is a good looking game, but not spectacular, but it's pleasant enough. I think I ended up fishing in Albion probably longer than any other game actually, enough that I was making money and I actually invested in a set of fisherman's clothes and a better rod. Everybody knows that you fish better when you have a fisherman's hat. It's the equivalent of Go Faster stripes. I also found satisfaction in judging it just right so that my float landed in the middle of the fish. Oh, my character is the most fisherman to ever fisherman.
I do be fishing and stuff.
We're starting strong here, to be honest. This might be hard to beat. In terms of just being able to log in and go off fishing and ignore everything else, well, this game fits that well. Although, if you want to find some of the more exotic or high-level fish, you may need to wander outside of the safety zones and into the full loot PvP zone, and when you do, anyway, I shall give this a 4 for gameplay. It is simple enough without being too simple, and even though it is pretty simple, it did make me feel like I was going about the place doing some fishing. For environment and aesthetics, I should give it a 3. It does look nice, but it isn't spectacular, and the isometric 2D view doesn't help me for immersion. Utility is a 3 because it is quite useful that you can sell your fish and stuff, but for me personally, if it wasn't for this fishing experiment, I wouldn't really play this game regularly, so it has a little applicable impact on me. I told you this was a bit vibes based. And for time to fish, I will also give it a 3 because it takes a bit of time to get there admittedly, but it isn't too painful and I didn't have to do too much googling or grinding to get the gear I needed. So it is kinda straight down the middle. So a final score of 13 for Albion Online.
Blistering barnacles.
Cult of the Lamb. Some games I have played before this experiment, and so I already have save files for it. One of those games is Cult of the Lamb. And Cult of the Lamb is a game where you surprisingly run your own cult. You can sacrifice your followers, marry them, or even make them eat poo. I'm not joking about that one. The game is half colony sim and half roguelike dungeon crawler. Both sides are equally competent and I would definitely recommend it. You can also go to an area on the overworld and do some fishing. This is sort of limited, but it is a fishing minigame nonetheless, so let's score it. For gameplay, I give it a 4. It is simple but satisfying in how it is presented. Not quite as good as Albion, but I still enjoyed it and found no friction while doing it, which is the most important to me. For environment and aesthetics, I am giving this a 2, which seems harsh, but it is only brought down by the fact that you only do fishing in one specific place, and so there is no real variety. tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't got far enough into the game because I'd spent too much time fucking about building my little camp and making my followers eat poo. But still. So even though that is the case, on another note, the graphics and the style of this game are actually exceptional. You should really check it out. But still, the limited environment and the 2D is never as good for my immersion. Utility is actually pretty high in this, and I'll give it a 4 because one of the things you have to do most in the game is feed your needy cult members lest they die, and so rather than them have to eat turds, you can actually cook them tasty fish so they grow up big and strong and demented. I've put time to fish as a 3, as I think you had to go through other parts of the game before you get to this. However, the game is good, so you don't really feel like you're being kept from anything, probably because you wouldn't actually be doing a stupid weird experiment like this, and your focus would not be on just going fishing. So a final score of 13 also. Elder Scrolls Online. I'll just come out and say I didn't play it. Over the years I have played so much of this game, and I recently reinstalled it again for another video I made and then uninstalled it, and when looking at it in the Steam library I just couldn't be fucked to reinstall it and wait for it to patch and all the rest of it, so fuck it. The first one on the pile of games I didn't play. I told you they wouldn't all be for good reasons. I've just got no appetite for this one at the moment. Fable. Fable is a legendary RPG from back in the day and is now fucking old. I purchased this game only recently, although I had played other games in the series back in the day. It definitely shows its age, but holds up fairly well. I had played it recently because lots of people had a big fucking cry because they've never seen a real woman before. But let's not get into that here, you can go watch my video on it if you want. Yes, the title is sarcastic, just in case you couldn't tell. Anyway, Fable does indeed have a fishing minigame, so enough guff, let's rate. For gameplay it's a 3, I'll be honest it is on the shit side, but there is just enough to stop it from being completely shit. Still pretty simple, perfect if you have a teeny tiny peanut brain, like those people who were crying about the new Fable. The environment is alright, but as I said, a bit dated, which is understandable. I'll give it a 2 for that fact, and that the actual location wasn't very inspired. For utility it's a 1. I don't think that fishing is particularly integral to you playing and completing this game, so with that being the case, what's the point? And time to fish is a 2 because I did have to fuck around quite a lot and do a lot of story missions and all the rest of it before I could get there, so that seems fair to me. And that is a final score of 8. For Fable. Final Fantasy XIV. I do love mmorpgs and everyone always goes on about Final Fantasy XIV, so I have legitimately tried a few times to get into this game. I just get so pissed off at all the fucking dialogue boxes. Please let me kill something and stop fucking talking. Anyway, I can see its merits, but I am not paying for a month's playtime just to fucking play a fishing minigame. Get in the sea. Guild Wars 2. Now, I love Guild Wars 2. Love it. I only started playing it 3 or 4 years ago, but coming in looking for something other than WoW to play and having 10 years of content behind it, it felt new and fresh, but familiar at the same time. I've played it ever since, and if anyone wants to get into MMORPGs, this is the one I would start with. You can just cruise about mindlessly doing quests and world events and enjoying yourself. They have a free trial which is the entire base game, so give that a spin. But how is the fishing? Let's rate it. Gameplay is a 2. Oh shit. Yeah, it hurts me too, but the minigame itself is a quite standard move the bar left and right and keep the marker in the yellow area. Sometimes it is fine, but sometimes them fish be moving about fast, and too often I found myself getting pretty pissed off, and if I get pissed off I am not having a good time. So just edging out of the Goldilocks zone into too hard. You may be able to improve your skills or equipment to make that process easier, but I can't be bothered. Environment is a 4. At times I straight up think this game is beautiful. The reflection on the water, the cherry blossom all around the mountains. You can fish anywhere, but it was introduced during the End of Dragons expansion, and so you just get in your little boat and fucking kick back out on the water. until you try and catch a fish, that is, and get all fucking pissed off. Utility, I'm going to give it a 2. I said I play a lot of this game, and I'll be honest, I ain't never needed to fish for nothing outside of this experiment. So with that in mind, it's not particularly crucial to my enjoyment of the game, so a 2. Time to fish is a solid 4. I said that fishing was introduced in End of Dragons, but as far as I know you can fish from the start these days. Obviously when it was first released it didn't exist. And even if you can't, for me personally in this vibes based system I was able to log in and just whip out my rod and get fishing immediately, so 4 it is on this janky criteria. Lost Ark. Now we get to the first game that really made me feel like I wanted to drop kick my computer out of the window. I feel conflicted about this game as when you are running around actually fighting things, it is amazing. I love the Diablo-esque combat feel and the big flashy moves, but this Korean MMO has so many other bullshit things that work against it, which has made me continually pick it up and put it down. But I always kept it installed just in case. Every time I boot it up, I have to close a million fucking windows tell me to claim this and that login reward. The game seems to crash over and over, which is infuriating coupled with how long it takes to fucking load up from Steam. The crafting system is borderline exploitative, and when I did get it going, I did so much googling about where to go fishing and then travelling to get to the fishing. Once I did actually get to the fishing spot, to a fishing spot to try the fishing, it then told me I didn't have any fucking bait. And I've always been willing to overlook the hyper-sexualised women and the usual Korean MMO nonsense, but trying to do some fishing and failing was the last straw. So I just uninstalled the game in a silent rage. Next, Lord of the Rings Online. I've always struggled to get into this game, another game I struggled with. Again, it is another MMORPG, but maybe there is something about it being from an established IP with established stories, and that it is set around the time of the stories because Aragorn and other characters are in it. And I think that the fact that I know what ultimately is going to happen sort of sucks my interest out of it. It is also a bit old and clunky as a game, and I personally prefer the Dungeons & Dragons Online game, which feels very similar, because I think it's made by the same people, but a little bit better to me in terms of combat. I think I prefer my Lord of the Rings games as more linear single player experiences. Anyway, apparently it does have a fishing minigame, but I googled where I could get a rod etc, and I found that where I needed to get to was blocked unless I finished some story missions, and so I parked it for a bit thinking maybe I'll come back and do them later, but all the other things about this game just made me decide to bin it and move on. So I did. Minecraft. I mean, what is there to say about Minecraft? You could probably ask your nan about Minecraft and she'd know what it was. You could probably ask my nan about Minecraft and she would know what it was, and she's dead. Minecraft is probably one of the most, if not the most popular games of all time. But how's the fishing? So, the gameplay? A big fat 1. I mean, it is shit. Press button to cast, press button again to reel in fish. No struggle, no fight, that's it. Nothing more to say. I know I have said that the fishing game needs to be simple, but not this simple. The environment is a free. I think Minecraft does look good and I like the very stylised look of the game, and sometimes with the light cresting a hill and looking out over the vista, the game is quite beautiful, even though it is essentially made out of fucking blocks. But in comparison to other games on the list, it gets a free. Utility is a free as well, purely just because if I was playing survival, I could use it to heal myself, which makes it pretty clutch, by eating the fish. But seeing as I mostly play in creative mode, if I play it at all, it's not really that important to me, so overall, it's a free. Time to fish is a 4. It barely took me any time to get up and running, probably because I may have been playing on creative mode, so if that is an option. So if you're playing Minecraft just to go fucking fishing, you can stick on creative mode and go fishing like literally immediately. So it's a total of 11 for the Titan that is Minecraft. Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World is a game that I haven't completed but keep coming back to, and unlike Lost Ark, I never feel frustrated by it. I only have good things to say about it. I own it on 2 systems, first on the PS4 where I bought it at release, and then on my PC where it was discounted on Steam, and where I do most of my gaming now, so I felt I should get it there. so the fact that I bought it twice says a lot. However, I have never bothered to do fishing. I knew it was there because I ran past the fucking fisherman dude who was in like the very first zone, I think, but I was doing a different type of hunting, so I always ignored him. But we are here now for fishing, so how does it hold up under the criteria? Gameplay is a score of 4. If you have played the minigame, you might think that's overly high because it is rather simple, but there is one big caveat that elevates it for me. Yes, it is simple if you're catching tiddlers, but every now and then you hook a fatty, and then there is a bit more to it. It's still just a quick time event, but when it happens, you sit up and take notice and you think, oh, it's on. And holding up that fat bastard makes you feel good. It may have also a lot to do with just that classic Capcom flair as well. But they do good animations, they do. The environment is also a 4 because just look at some of these environments. When they're not lush green forests and strange alien corals, they are moody caverns and volcanic passages. You can also fish anywhere you can find a spot, so you can proper adventure about the different zones, catching different fish. I love the way this game looks, and even if it is getting on a bit now, it still looks good. I'm definitely looking forward to Wilds, that's for sure. The utility score is a 3 because the fish caught can be used to buff you and be cooked by the little cat man. But I tend not to worry about that too much and just buy my food buffs with money, so the utility is there, but I often forget to use it. And as I said, I hadn't actually been fishing at all until this project started, so I think it's fair to say that it's not particularly crucial to me. The time to fish I've put down as a 3. Personally for this, I went straight in and found the fishing trainer dude in the very first level and then started immediately. But even if this was a fresh start, apart from sitting through a load of classic Capcom style cutscenes, the fishing guy is presented fairly early on, so I think 3 is fair. Leaving a final score of 14. The highest so far, which sort of surprises me but sort of doesn't now I think about it. So Monster Hunter World is the current leading champion. Neir Automata. This futuristic anime flavoured RPG epic isn't usually my kind of game in terms of style, but I do like it. It is another game that I haven't completed, but I think that is more because whenever I've bought it, and I do own it again on both PS4 and PC, I've purchased it in a sale along with other games because I know this game is a game that gets high praise, and so I think it's reduced, I should get that. And I have. Then I start playing, and I play for a few hours, and I think, yeah, this is a good game. But I'll try some other games I bought, and I'll come back to it. And then, because my brain's a bit broken, I probably started playing World of Warcraft again or something. Such is life. But, to my surprise, there is a fishing game. And I never knew, so I loaded it up fresh on my PC with the express mission of going fishing. So how did it hold up? Straight off the bat, the gameplay is a 2. It's a bit too simple. The only thing that raises it off the floor to a 2 is because it's kind of novel and fun looking. You don't use the rod really, you just use your little floaty robot to just pluck the carp out of the water as 2B sits back on a sort of cyber fishing seat. It's essentially Minecraft, but with better animations to make it more interesting. So it's pretty simple, you just press the button to cast and press the button to land. Again, like Minecraft, but just more visually interesting. Environment for me is a 4 because where I fished was a pretty nice view, and overall the game, like Monster Hunter World, looks great even though it's knocking on a bit. And they are all sort of interesting biomes, if you will. Time to fish is a 3. It does take a little while to get into the game to the point where you have a bit of freedom as you need to play through the whole intro, which is well worth playing and very epic, so no complaints, but you won't be fishing from the start. But once you get to a certain point, you can then just do it as much as you want. A final score of 11. Neverwinter. Neverwinter is another game that I keep around because on the odd occasion I jump in. It is quite fun, but I sort of play it as a solo action RPG rather than an MMO like it's meant to be. I have no intention of getting sucked into endgame because I know this free-to-play MMO is looking to stripe up your wallet at every opportunity, and has some of the shittest monetization tactics of any of these games. But alas, it is quite fun at times. And I did have fun as I got to playing it again. as I heard there was a fishing minigame within the Endless Sea or something like that, or Sea of Endless Ice or something or some such. I actually started to enjoy myself to the point where I forgot what I was supposed to be doing, and quite some time passed. I did a bit of Google, and it would appear that the fishing is actually behind a paid for expansion, as far as I could find out. Do tell me if I'm wrong, but I ain't paying this game for a new expansion just so I could go and play fucking fishing, so another one on the pile. On the other hand, if you do want to spend some time mindlessly fighting stuff for free, it is a good shout. Just remember to pull the ripcord when the time comes. New World. New World is another game that I have also struggled with. I did waver a little before I hit the button to once again download this to try and get into the fishing, because every time I re-download it I sort of play it for a bit and think, oh, this isn't so bad, why did I stop playing this? And then over time it just sort of fades and I get bored. It isn't even like it's bad. Maybe you could say I haven't gotten far enough into it, but there just doesn't seem to be enough enemy variety and I get sick of fighting fat pigs and skeletons. And not even that wood chopping sound can save it. It does look great though, and I'll always give it that. I just can't put my finger on it, but it always just ends up being a bit meh. But how is the fishing? Surprisingly okay. Let's rate it. Gameplay is a 4, a nice simple game, although it makes you feel like you're doing something, and that even though you ain't really doing shit, it feels like your character is at least straining against the weight of the fish. It is just about holding down the button and then letting off as the tension grows so as not to lose the fish, and then guiding the fish in a certain direction from time to time. The environment is really nice, as I said before, and the game generally looks good, if not a bit uninspired in places. And so because it's uninspired, I shall give it a 3. Just for being a bit, well, it's a bit too good, it's a bit too sort of just realistic, but maybe I don't want realistic, maybe I want something a bit more fantastical. It may get better in other places, but certainly where I fished, it was again just a bit meh, as is the rest of the game. As for utility, I'm going to give it a 2 because, like I've said about other games on this list, I never engaged with it up until now, so to be quite honest, it has no real utility for me. I can see how it could help in game, but for me personally, no. Time to fish, I'll give it a 3. You got to get through some stuff, but it shouldn't be long before you can craft or buy a rod and get to the fishing. So total score of 12. Old School Runescape and Runescape. I'm just going to lump these two in together. I know that will probably enrage some purists somewhere, but it is just for the purposes of this video. RuneScape is an old classic online RPG that is a true legend of the genre. Loved and played by millions and millions over the years and years it has been going. Its accessibility through web browsers originally made it a popular choice for many. But for me, it's another game that I have always struggled with. It just feels like mindless grind. Maybe if I'd have come to it years ago I could have got hooked, but I came to it after playing other MMOs, and so it always just seemed a bit slow and shit. Please don't get it twisted, I see the potential in it and I understand why others love it, but for me, I struggle with it massively. So when it came to fishing, I could feel my heart wasn't really in it, and I had a feeling that what was at the end of the path was nothing more than something akin to gathering wood. But I tried. I went around googling and trying to find a shop in Lumbridge. I started in Old School Runescape first, and I found myself going from one spot to another trying to figure it out. I found a shop but couldn't afford the rods, so I started beating up orcs to see if I could get loot, which mainly was bones, and so I go back into the fishing shop, but he didn't want to buy any of the bones because this isn't that kind of game, and I have to find a shop that will specifically buy bones, or whatever it is. And then I got jumped by some bandits and I died, and that was it. I could see a bit of a grind in front of me and I just wasn't prepared to do it, so I looked up what fishing looked like and I was right, not really a minigame at all. So onto the pile with you, and take your fucking brother with you too. Next, Realm of the Mad God Exalt. I'll be honest, I have barely ever played this. But apparently it has a fishing element, so I googled it and it said something about going to the bottom right of the map to the coral or something, and so I got out and started making my way down, got lost in a dark forest and couldn't find my way out and just binned this off double quick. Fuck it, I can't find anything redeeming about this game, although I'm sure its fans would defend it, and I know they do exist, but I am not one of them. Get in the sea. Stardew Valley. We're back to an actual scoring game now, and the game that started this whole thing, which I must admit is starting to get a little bit tedious now. Stardew Valley might be the king of cozy games, particularly chill, creating your little farm, and it is rightly so a very popular game. As I said, I have been playing a few in-game days each night before bed, and it is great for that, as well as something you could really invest into its many systems if you wanted to. Whether you are romancing villagers or trying to house as many chickens as is possible, Stardew Valley is an all-round good time, probably only rivaled by Animal Crossing for the cozy crown. Also, as an interesting coincidence, when I loaded up my PC version of the game to get some footage, as if by magic, the fishing guy, who I had ignored because I was too obsessed with chickens, was literally waiting on my doorstep to give me a fishing rod. What a stroke of luck. But in terms of fishing, this is a strong player in this game of mini-games. The gameplay score on this one is a touch lower at 3 than some of the other games on this list, but that is more because it's a tiny bit annoying at times. It's not too hard, but it can be just a little bit irritating. It's not as infuriating as Guild Wars 2, but it's still frustrating. It is one of those games where you are pressing the button to move the green area up the scale and keep it in line with the marker, which then moves around, so it's not too hard but can be tricky. It feels a little bit like playing Flappy Bird or something. The environment is a free, purely because while it does have great iconic graphics, the 2D setting holds back the immersion somewhat. Now, it really comes into its own with a utility score of 4, as fishing in this game is literally supplementing my farming, and a big part of why I've been able to build up a lot of cash, because I can sell the fish at the end of each day. Time to fish is a 4 because you only have to play through a few days before you're invited to the docks and given a rod to get started with, so you're actively encouraged to get stuck in early doors. Another strong total of 14, on par with Monster Hunter World. What an odd list this is. Shenmue 3. Holy shitting Jesus fuck shit. This is the moment that this whole thing took a really bizarre and infuriating turn. A truly maddening game which will take some explaining. The original Shenmue was a Sega Dreamcast game and an early example of what would become the open world RPG. The developer, Yu Suzuki, wanted to make an RPG on his principal concept of free, full reactive eyes entertainment. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about either, but still. To cut a long story short, it was all about having the freedom to do all sorts of shit in the game. You know, playing pachinko machines and other sort of crazy mini games. A principle that I wish he'd carried into Shenmue 3, because I can tell you, I felt the very opposite of free. This game was a late addition to this project, but in the process of researching which of my games had a minigame, I saw people talking about games with fishing minigames, and Shenmue came up, and not only that, people were saying it was one of the best minigames. I had never played any of these games before, they aren't really my style, and I never had a Sega Dreamcast, so the original passed me by. But I did a search on Steam as I remembered that there had been a Kickstarter for Suzuki to make Shenmue 3, and it came up heavily discounted to like £3. Maybe that was a bad omen. So, not knowing what the hell I was getting myself into, I bought it, and here we are. This game is fucking mental, and I don't mean in a good wacky way, I mean in a what the fuck is going on way, in a where the fuck am I supposed to go now way, in a why the fuck did you say that way. To be less critical for a moment, the game does look pretty good. Well, the scenery anyway. The main character, Ryo, looks like he's had his face kind of like squashed into the middle of it. To cut a long story short, Tiny Face has to find Shenhue's dad or something. It basically runs on from the story from the first two games, and so once you get out of the first cutscene, which I didn't pay too much attention to, you are tasked with talking to everyone in the village in order to aid your investigation. Not just a few people, everyone. And if you were playing this game because you want to immerse yourself in the story, that might be fine. But for a man who just wants to crack open the fishing minigame egg and slurp up the sweet golden yolk inside, the game fights you at every turn. Firstly, it won't let me leave the village until I have satisfied the story somehow, and that seems to be talking to everyone. I'm on my own, Shenmue goes to some other village, and I talk to everyone, and everyone thinks I'm a cunt because I am a stranger. The conversations are batshit mental, and sometimes it feels like two people are having two different conversations, but with each other at the same time.
Hi there.
Aha! Come to apprentice under me, have you?
Oh, nothing.
Fear not, for I am the great Sudza Xiong. I can forge a formidable master out of the most hopeless of pupils. You stand before a Chun Tai Chi master.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Have you seen Mr. Yuan?
Do I look like I'd know anything about that?
Right.
Come by any time if you've got any burning questions about the great Chun Tai Chi.
Will do.
I come back the next day in game, and this time with Shenmue, or whatever her name is, and this time I have to speak to everyone again, but this time, because she's with me, they all sort of speak to me, so I don't know if that was some kind of story device to make me feel like a stranger and unwanted, but I tell you what it was a big fucking waste of my time. Look, once again, I will cut a long story short, because it is a fucking long story. I started playing this fucking game on Friday evening about 7 PM, and it was just after midnight that I finally achieved my mission. I had to do a load of stupid stuff to get there, but it involved grinding, eating black garlic to restore my health, learning kung fu, beating up a bookie, and then at one point where I had become so annoyed by the game, I had to go to a bar at night, specifically at night, to then speak to someone to progress the story. And I'll be damned if I was going to play any more of this stupid fucking game. So I put my man by the bar and just literally stood there and let the in-game clock start to count down. I went off and had a shit, made something to eat, and started watching the Super Eye Patch Wolf video about Shenmue 3 to make myself feel better by watching his painful experience with the game. Solidarity, brother. One tiny upside is watching him talk about the whole game meant that I didn't have to continue this fucking stupid thing a moment more than the fishing. And thank God, because if I had continued, the grind that was coming up would have literally given me an aneurysm. At one point I could see the fucking fish shop I needed to get to rent the rod, but every time I ran towards it, the game would literally turn my character around and then he would say how I should probably go and talk to some more people in this village.
I should talk to more people around here. Maybe I'll talk to a few folks around here.
Freedom indeed, Mr. Suzuki, you motherfucker. Anyway, I did get to the fishing game, and what fishing indeed. Despite all the demented nonsense, this is probably the best one yet. It is a little bit Sega bass fishing, just a little bit, but in the spirit of what we've been looking for, it is simple enough but not too simple. Dare I say, I even enjoyed it. Whether that was because I was just so elated to have completed my self-imposed quest, I don't know, but I did spend quite a while doing a big old fish. So let's rate this big pile of mad shit. Gameplay gets a 5, no notes, a perfecto. Mwah. I just explained it so there's no need to blather on, but very enjoyable. The environment is a solid 4. It does look very nice and the fishing lake was quite relaxing in opposition to the infuriating bullshit of everything else. But now this is where the scoring drops off a cliff for me personally, so utility is a 1, purely because I will never play this game again, and so this provides me with nothing going forward. Yes, technically you can sell your fish after the session and you do need money in the game to do shit, So I guess if you were to carry on with it, it would provide some level of utility. But as I said, not for me, as I will never play this game again, and if I owned a physical copy, I would set it on fire. Time to fish is also a 1. I mean, need I say more? It isn't just the actual time, as some other games may have taken me a similar amount of time to get to the point where I was able to fish. Although it only took 5 hours, every hour felt like the equivalent of 3 hours. So all its weird bullshit compounded the issue, so it felt like an eternity. A total score of 11, which is fairly misleading, but there we go. I'm now going to rattle through 4 games in a row that I didn't even get to fishing and give a quick explanation as why. A lot of it is probably had to do with trying them directly after Shenmue 3 in the middle of the night, and that game had worn down my sanity quite a lot, but still. Anyway, Terraria. In general, I am not a big fan of survival games, 3D or 2D. Anything where I have to break one thing to make another, to then make another, to make another, and then another, and then another, and then another, ad infinitum, just begins to bore me. I do see why other people like them. Some friends of mine have spent hours digging a tunnel network in 7 Days to Die and made giant zombie-proof bases, so I see the potential in playing these games with a friend and the feeling of building something and achieving something and having to work to do it, but my brain isn't set up for these types of games. Either way, it wasn't necessarily the fact that it was a survival game per se that made me quit this one, and more that when I tried, I kept falling into a pool of water which extinguished my torch and meant that the ice that I fell through was stopping me from jumping back out, and so I drowned alone in the dark. So I turned it off. Next, Toram Online. In what was about to be my Just Strife Haze arc, I booted up Toram Online that I had added at some point to my Steam library when I was searching for other mmorpgs to play that I hadn't played before, and to cut a long story short, the load times were just appalling, and let's face it, the game was shit. Go watch Josh's video for a more thorough exploration of that, because I cannot be fucked. Another one on the pile. V Rising. Another game I have tried quite a few times, and I have picked it up and put it down a lot. It does have survival elements which may have contributed to that, but there is an ARPG element which I do kind of like. Anyway, I started playing through expecting that I would have to build and complete a certain amount of quests before I could get into the point of crafting a fishing rod, and I did see a fishing spot, but I decided to abandon the game because I was actually having a good time playing it. I think that since I last booted it up, there is a better controller support, or just controller support, and whilst I do like playing ARPGs with a mouse and keyboard, the ability to sit back in my chair and relax a bit with this made it more enjoyable. So rather than rushing things and trying to get to the fishing, I decided to take this one off the list and just play it to enjoy it on my own. A pleasant surprise. Valheim. Look. Survival game. Need I say more? I love the way this game looks and the theme, but I just can't do the whole punching trees to make an axe to make a workbench path. I think a big part of that as well is when I die and drop all your gear and you have to run back to your corpse. I just fucking hate that. It drives me mad. And I'm tired now as well, and I need to wrap this up. I don't know why I started this now. Seems like a bit of a stupid idea, but if I just move past this, there'll be one more game to look at. So let's just get to it. World of Warcraft. The World of Warcraft. What can I say about this game? You've probably heard of it even if you don't play it, conjuring images of neckbeards and shut-in nerds surrounded by empty soda cups. I've played this game on and off for decades now, but as what I would class as a dedicated casual. I am looking forward to the War Within, which I have pre-ordered, so I may make a little video about my experience with that, but as far as the fishing goes, well, I never have. In all this time, I have never gone fishing, so I did, and it was shit. I mean, you can barely call it a minigame, so let's just get this out of the way then. Gameplay is a 1. It's not a minigame, it's just gathering. Moving on. Environment. I am giving this a 4 because I have always thought this game looks beautiful. I love the stylized vibes, and I just like spending time in many of the different biomes. I know I'm biased, but subjectively, I love it. Utility, on the other hand, is a 2. I told you I've played this game on and off for 20 years and never been fishing, so it is hardly that important to me, so it doesn't really have too much utility. Time to fish, I'll give it a 3 from what I remember. You can't do it immediately, but I don't think it takes too long really, just your average time to fish. Phew, so that is the lot. So let's analyse those results, as if this is something that even really matters. Anyway. The results. If we look at the results, we essentially have 3 pairs of games filling out each slot on our podium. Perhaps I should have scored this out of 10 in hindsight, but I don't want to waste any more brain power on this, so we are where we are. In the bronze medal place, we have the combination of Guild Wars 2 and New World. Seems fair to me, they both have their pluses and minuses. Then in the silver position, we have Albion and Cult of the Lamb, both fine games. And in gold, Monster Hunter World and Stardew Valley. If we're going to go further and I had to pick a top 3 based just on their respective scores and my own preferences, looking at that list, I think it would go like this. Bronze, Albion, silver, Stardew Valley, gold, Monster Hunter World. I'm not sure how to feel about those results. I mean, I'm happy, I guess. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that as much as I can be happy with this whole thing. If we break that down a little bit further and look by category, then we have the following. For the gameplay category, the clear winner was Shenmue 3, which kind of makes me wince a bit when I say that, but the mark of a true man of integrity is being able to be fair and honourable with his criticisms and praise. And whilst I never want to play that fucking game again, I must hand it to them for the fishing minigame, the undisputed winner with the highest score of 5. For environment and aesthetics, we have 5 games tied at the top. Guild Wars 2, Monster Hunter World, Neir Automata, Shenmue 3 and World of Warcraft. If I had to whittle those down out of the 5, I think I would probably immediately go with Guild Wars 2, Monster Hunter World and World of Warcraft. In terms of personal preference, and bearing in mind that this sort of thing is highly subjective, I think I'd just give it to WoW, because I sincerely love the style. Guild Wars 2 and Monster Hunter World come in very close second and third, but it goes to World of Warcraft because I am biased. For utility, there are 2 games tied at the top, Cult of the Lamb and Stardew Valley. I'm not going to fuck about. The role that fishing plays in both games can be fairly crucial, but for my personal utility, I will give it to Stardew Valley. And last but not least, we have 3 games tied on 4 points for the time to fish. Guild Wars 2, Minecraft and Stardew Valley. I think again it has to go to Stardew Valley. Yes, you can play Minecraft on creative mode and you would be able to fish almost immediately, but as far as the actual game goes, getting you into fishing, Stardew Valley gets you going as part of the actual game pretty fast. So our medal winners are the overall points-based winner, Monster Hunter World, the gameplay winner, Shenmue 3, the environment is WoW, utility is Stardew Valley, and time to fish is also Stardew Valley. So Stardew, the game that started this fucking pointless nonsense, wins the most medals, but not the overall winner, which again is Monster Hunter World. But wait, there is one last game. A game that I don't really feel like it should be included, but technically, it is an adventure game that has fishing mini-games. That's right, games, as in more than one. And that game is Dredge. If I score Dredge on the same criteria, then it literally takes a fat shit all over the other game's faces. Gameplay is a 4, environment is a 4, utility is a 5, time to fish is a 5, a total massive score of 18 points. But is this fair? Should this game be allowed in? I mean, the whole game is about fishing, which means it literally gets a 5 in both utility and time to fish straight off the bat, which is kind of not fair, but it also looks great and it plays great, so you can see why I've left it out of the main roster. Let me know in the comments if you think that this game should qualify, even though it is a game all about fishing. And if we go back to the beginning of this, I asked myself two questions. Could any of these games perform strong enough that I would just want to play the fishing game and not the main game? And could any of them match the same relaxing nature of real fishing? Well, no and no. Quite simply, some of them I played more than others, but for the games on that list that I actually like, I'd just rather keep the fishing games as a bit of a palate cleanser they were meant to be. And as a substitute for real fishing or getting outside in the sunshine, of course not. Don't be stupid. Get outside and touch that grass. Maybe drink a beer and smoke a joint. Enjoy it. You can play video games when you get home. So now that this is all over, what was the point? I don't think there is one. Just like, why the fuck not? Sometimes it's just good to be silly, and this certainly is a little bit silly. And sometimes it's just good to finish something. I know it's a personal thing that I'm always trying to do, which is I've always been a person that has endless amounts of ideas and never finishes any of them. Part of the whole reason of this channel and making videos is not only that I get to just indulge like a creative pastime, it's an exercise in planning something and then executing it and finishing it. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's all that really matters. I think I've flogged this dead fish for all it's worth now. I hope you've enjoyed it, whatever the fuck this is. But I think I'll go and play something else now to relax.